Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, o see them yopo.
Memo akwa ba e de ba PENDREAM TV measures and any day they can share and have subscribe to channel. No click bell to say the news too also sabe to me aka no ahwe in term. And yeah round the abe any Felix Akufo-Addo e di nkomo bi for transition teams meeting akoso from Enra na no na omanya ntia se Akufo-Addo aban omo hu so mo ba be free su omo recruit amount for illegally like omo backdate amount for appointment amana ko yese nyesesi na omo recruit omo abeda this about 700 people and omo recruit omo GRA and omo recruit bi so Bank of Ghana chese aban a wo be free so a wo beda ni akonya na ma president elect no washada niema chese be bonika afei so omo hu se sika bi about 240 million Ghana cedis a omo chese omo betu ama hotel de no amnyina beda ria no Felix Akufo-Addo de hu nsema betu dia chese nya de omo be pene ama sa niema we nyina akoso nti omo guso ene omo ka esanse aban a yato abati a obefiri su de untimi emfa ne oba no enhye tai corner na me kata bebre yenko na nyina enko hwe video no tie nchiremu a Felix Ofosu kwachide ma na how wicked abaya ya to etia na esi.
All right. So I was saying that after the maiden meeting, it appears that your side has raised some issues with respect to last minute recruitments, some 240 million CD payments, and if you were watching, I've just also put out an appointment yesterday, in fact, a swearing in of a deputy commissioner of Straj by President Akufo-Addo, and juxtaposed that against the position of his transition team in 2016 when the then president, John Dramani Mahama, wanted to appoint a government statistician, some senior officers of UOKU, and of course some appointments in some MDAs.
Well, let me start by indicating that the meeting itself was cordial yesterday. It got off well. In compliance with Section 4 of the Transition Act of 2012, 3 committees or 3 subcommittees were established. That is the inauguration subcommittee that is tasked with the responsibility of organizing the 7th January swearing in of the president-elect. Then there was a government machinery subcommittee that has the duty to coordinate and arrange the handing over to the new administration of the machinery of the civil service, that's the ministries, departments, and agencies. And then there was a presidency subcommittee that is tasked with ensuring the orderly transfer of all assets and liabilities of the president, the vice president, the ministers, deputy ministers, regional ministers, deputy regional ministers, and everybody who works under the presidency. So these committees were established. They were populated by highly respected individuals, and they have been charged to get to work right away to ensure that this thing is done and over with within a reasonable time. Then the NDC side of the transition team raised concern about some developments that have gone on without recourse to us. Now, it concerns the letter that you raised. You recall that in December 2017, Mr. Osamafu wrote this letter when some appointments were about to be made. Now, it would have been expected that having set the tone, having set this precedence, the MPP side would be minded to act accordingly and not go behind the NDC side to take major decisions that have significant fiscal implications for the incoming government without recourse to us. But unfortunately, that does not appear to be the case. We are here in Rwanda that in various MDAs, large numbers of people are being recruited in a manner that lacks transparency, in a manner that lacks regularity, and in a manner that appears to even breach the various rules and regulations governing the operations of these MDAs. For instance, we are hearing that up to 700 people have been given backdated appointment letters in GRA alone, and that these individuals were not taken through any known recruitment process. First of all, they did not put in any applications. They have not undergone any interviews. They have not gone through medicals as would be required. Nothing of the sort has happened. and yet they have been given letters that have been backdated. We have also heard of similar developments at the Bank of Ghana and many other places. We also know of large amounts of monies that are being paid to entities whose services are yet to be determined. For instance, we do know that the Electricity Company of Ghana is on the verge of paying a colossal 249 million Ghana cedis to a company called Haptel for services that as yet are unclear. Now, if this payment was, for instance, being made to an IPP under the cash waterfall mechanism, one could perhaps understand the urgency of the situation. But it is being paid to a service provider whose services are not as yet very, very clear and whose services by no means constitutes an emergency. Now, 249 million Ghana cedis is a huge amount that will take a toll on our public finances. And we are talking about public finances that are in shambles, that the government itself admits is in disarray. And therefore, it would stand to reason that before such huge commitments are made that bind the incoming governments, efforts will be made to seek the buy-in or consent, or as Mr. Asafo stated in his own letter, explicit consent of the incoming administration, so that we reach common ground, we are in the know, and know exactly what to do when we take over power. Now, what is going to happen is that these large numbers of recruits are essentially being imposed on the new administration to work with, when they may not necessarily fit into the program of the new administration. Large amounts of money are being committed at a time when we do not even know the full extent of our financial problems, when the books have not been opened, when we have not gone through them, when scrutiny has not been carried out for us to know where we stand exactly in terms of our finances. So we come into power and then we are confronted with payments that we are unaware of, and it throws our entire program off gear. For instance, Randy, it is not for nothing that at the end of the mandate of any government, they don't prepare a budget covering the next year. What you do have is a certain appropriation that covers only 3 months of statutory payments. Even then, it is only statutory payments, as in debt servicing and salaries and other payments that revolve around emergency, that are allowed to be paid. Discretionary payments are not allowed, and it is for good reason, so that you do not bind the incoming administration and saddle them with responsibilities that they are unaware of before taking over. So this was a matter of grave concern for the members of the NDC side of the transition team, and we raised it forcefully. Eventually, it was decided that the matter will be revisited on Friday, but we are hearing that even after that consensus was reached, some movements are still taking place regarding recruitments and payments, and we insist that these payments be suspended. Now, it was also suggested at the meeting yesterday that given the gravity of the situation, the seriousness of the matter, a subcommittee should be formed to look at these matters regarding recruitments, last-minute appointments, and significant payments, so that we understand fully the broad range of issues covering these matters, so firm decisions can be taken. But it is our position that no such recruitments or payments should be made without having been subjected to scrutiny by the NDC side. And we stand firmly by this.
Now, but Felix, you made the point that whilst you are at it, it's actually ongoing. So what are you going to do about it?
Apparently, there's a remedy. The new government reserves the right to review these transactions, especially in circumstances where they were not done regularly. For instance, if people have been recruited and they've not gone through due process, not going through due process would vitiate any such appointments. And therefore, the incoming government will reserve the right to review them as and when we deem necessary. So those who are in a hurry to ram this thing through without recourse to due process and are not following laid down rules should know that they will be held accountable when the new government takes over. It is in their own interest that they put an end to this, consult the incoming administration, so that we find common ground and seek consensus on the matter before any such processes can proceed. Those paying monies without due process should remember that there are laws. There are procurement laws. There are laws governing how monies are to be paid from the public office. And if you go against it and it is found out, you will be held accountable, strictly so. So I don't think that anybody can pretend that merely because they are in the position of authority today and there is some bit of lacuna because of a transition, they are free to do as they please. There will be consequences for the actions they are taking, and it will be in their own interest that they do things properly, i.e. consult the incoming government and seek, again, using Mr. Osafo-Mafo's expression, explicit consent before they proceed.
Now, Felix, it appears, abundantly clear in this Fourth Republic that anytime we give the right of discretion to persons, and we expect that they will exercise that right in accordance with how the Constitution prescribes discretion to be exercised. They have failed us, and if you even look at the Transitional Act itself, it is a product of years of our inability to do what is right, to exercise discretion in the most appropriate manner. Now, if you look at the position of the MPP side in 2017, you would expect that if we're dealing with principles on the basis that this is what they believed was right and proper 8 years ago, they will be the first to set that example. But obviously, because maybe those things are not enacted, those things are not made law, and it's still left to the discretion and perhaps common sense of persons, we see an abuse of it again. There are people who think that, look, if these people want to behave, and when I say these people, I mean the Ghanaian people, if people in leadership want to behave like robots, yes, by all means, put this as a law and let them follow it strictly, because they tend to abuse discretionary power.
Yeah, Randy, I'm one of those who does not believe that everything has to be legislated. I would have thought that human beings have the capacity to reason, and therefore will make decisions based on sound judgments, will make decisions based on acceptable principles and standards. We should know what is fair, what is right, what is balanced, and what we have to do in every given situation. But in the light of the matters that you have raised, I'm inclined to change my position. It does appear that we are going to have to write this in black and white in our laws, because it would only make sense that right after an election, no major decision is taken, and that such major decisions are left for the incoming administration, unless those decisions border on resolving an emergency or a critical national security matter. Beyond that, I don't see the need for these rushed appointments. It would appear that the MPP is in a hurry to appoint supporters and sympathizers into key positions before they leave, because perhaps they believe that they will be orphaned, as it were, to use that expression, if they left them, if they left power without doing so. But that is not right. The national cake does not belong to political parties. They are not remnants, or if you like, they are not a family heirloom that should be scrambled for. So when you lose elections, you don't rush to fix your people in position before you leave power. You've had 8 years to do so. Why the sudden rush? What is it that they want to do now that they could not have done in the 8 years that Ghanaians gave them to run this country? So it is completely improper. But as you said, it is clear that we are now going to have to write this in explicit terms in our laws before people are bound by it and people comply with it. Otherwise, I would have thought that common sense would prevail in these matters. 3 months to an election, or in the last quarter of the year, of an election year, I don't think that any government ought to be binding the next government with any major decisions, any major financial transactions, or any significant appointments. That is a position that we need, as it were, to amend the Transition Act to cater for. It is most unfortunate that it has to come to this, but that appears to me to be the only remedy. But as I indicated, the incoming government has the right to review and reverse some of these decisions, insofar as they do not meet acceptable standards, insofar as they don't comply with Ghanaian law, insofar as they bind us unfairly to payments and decisions that can prove detrimental to our own government's program.
All right, Felix. So we'll thank you and we'll leave it here, and we'll keep monitoring the process and see how it goes with the transition, especially your meeting on Friday. I'm sure that this issue will be on the front burner amongst the many other things that you have to do, especially with this latest developments.